another big one. The text messages released late last night. House Democrats releasing messages that seem to show how the president's top envoys pushed the president of Ukraine to investigate the Bidens and to investigate the unsubstantiated conspiracy theory that Ukraine meddled in the 2016 election. That pressure included dangling the possibility of a White House visit. The messages appear to confirm reporting from the New York Times that then Special Envoy to Ukraine Kurt Volker and the U.S. Ambassador to the European Union Gordon Sondland helped draft a statement for the Ukrainian president committing to an investigation into the Bidens. In a July 19th text message, Volker texts this to Sondland: "Had breakfast with Rudy this morning, teeing up call with Yermak." Andrei Yermak is an aide to the Ukrainian president. Volker then adds, most important is for Zelensky to say that he will help investigation. 2 days later, Bill Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, texts Sondland, writing this: "President Zelensky is sensitive about Ukraine being taken seriously, not merely as an instrument in Washington domestic re-election politics." On the morning of President Trump's July 25th phone call with the Ukrainian president, Volker texts Zelensky's aide this: "Heard from White House. Assuming President Z convinces Trump he will investigate, get to the bottom of what happened in 2016, we will nail down a date for a visit to Washington." Then, on August 9th, Volker texts Rudy Giuliani, quote, "Hi, Mr. Mayor, had a good chat with Yermak." Again, that's Zelensky's aide. "He was pleased with your phone call. Mentioned Z making a statement. Can we all get on the phone to make sure I advise Z correctly as to what he should be saying? Want to make sure we get this done right." The next day, Zelensky's aide texts Volker saying he wants to get a date for the White House visit before committing to a statement about investigating the Bidens and the 2016 election. The aide texts back, "Once we have a date, we'll call for a press briefing announcing upcoming visit and outlining vision for the reboot of U.S.-Ukraine relationship, including, among other things, Burisma and the election meddling." On August 28th, Zelensky's aide texts Volker a Politico article about Trump withholding military aid to Ukraine, saying, quote, "I need to talk to you." Several days later, on September 1st, Taylor texts Sondland, "Are we now saying that security assistance and White House meeting are conditioned on investigations?" Sondland responds, "Call me." A week later, Taylor texts Volker, "The nightmare scenario is they give an interview and don't get security assistance. The Russians love it, and I quit." Taylor also texts Sondland the following day this, quote, "As I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." Sondland waited and responded more than 4 hours later, telling Taylor that Trump, quote, "has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind," and then suggests they stop discussing the matter over text message. That last exchange happened September 9th, the same day the Intelligence Community Inspector General told the House and Senate Intel committees that the whistleblower complaint. The military aid was released 2 days later. Let's bring in national political reporter for NBC News, Josh Lederman. Josh, I just read a ton of text. I know it's a lot for people to digest at this hour of the day. Take us through it a little bit, who these players are and what you found significant in what was released last night by these House committees.
Yeah, so we got these in a document dump late last night, Willie. We've been going through them all night to analyze them. And what they show is that this effort by Trump to get the Ukrainians to launch an investigation to his political opponents was bigger than Rudy Giuliani. It involved a handful of people, at least, including really senior diplomats at the State Department. And there's really not a lot of insinuation about what these text messages are talking about. It's pretty stunning to see it laid out in cold, hard print. You see senior U.S. ambassadors, including Kurt Volker, who was the special envoy for Ukraine until he abruptly resigned in the wake of all of this, as well as the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, Trump donor, who was appointed to that position, talking about how they can get the Ukrainians to launch this investigation and specifically tying it to whether President Zelensky would get an invitation to come to the White House. We also see, as you showed in one of those text messages, another senior diplomat, Mr. Taylor, pushing back in real time, basically saying, guys, this is not kosher. We can't be linking military assistance to whether or not another country is going to investigate something. And the one other part that we see in this it's really pretty profound is how you have the Ukrainian government actually speaking with these diplomats, a senior aide to President Zelensky, texting back and forth, trying to figure out exactly what words President Zelensky would be willing to say in this announcement of a potential corruption investigation.
So, Elise Jordan, you worked in the State Department. Just take a step back for us. We'll dig into more of the specifics of these texts, but just the tone and the tenor and the conduct between these people who are texting back and forth. Some of them political appointees, some of them career diplomats.
Well, I think we should point out that the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, he was a political appointee.
Right.
He had donated around $1 million to Donald Trump's election campaign. Came in, I think, around May 2018, Senate confirmed. Then you've got Ambassador Bill Taylor, who is a longtime diplomat at the State Department. He coordinated U.S. aid to post-Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. So he has deep experience in the region. Was in Baghdad, was in Kabul. Then you've got Ambassador Kurt Volker, who was the U.S. ambassador to NATO during the Bush administration. So you have this cast of characters, one political, the other two career, but Kurt Volker being brought in more of an advisory, special envoy, troubleshooting role. You look at the text exchange and who actually stands up and says this is wrong, and that's Ambassador Taylor, the career diplomat who's serving in the Ukraine. And Kurt Volker seems to be in a very tenuous position in the text, my analysis, that he's trying to placate Rudy Giuliani and the crazy over here while helping the Ukrainians manage the situation, but actually get the aid and the arms that they need by placating Donald Trump and hitting some fine balance, negotiating some fine balance about what would be acceptable.
And we should remind our viewers that Ukraine's not part of the EU, so it raises the question, as Andrea Mitchell has been raising, why Gordon Sondland was even involved in this conversation as the U.S. ambassador to the EU. Josh, what people will be combing through these texts to look for is some type of a quid pro quo. We heard pretty specifically, as this conversation went on, one person saying, wait a minute, the president did say quid pro quo, let's get off text messages, as if to have raised the alarm and say, I see what's happening here on these text messages. They will probably become public someday, as they have this morning. Do you see something in these texts that show, if not an explicit quid pro quo, but an implicit quid pro quo about the Bidens and about Burisma?
Right. What's so funny is that when Ambassador Taylor brings this up, essentially doing a little bit of, cover your behind by trying to actually put in text message, we've discussed this on the phone. You know that I think this is not okay. We then see Ambassador Sondland pushing back and specifically saying there's no quid pro quo here. But the fact that they say that there's no quid pro quo does not change the fact that if you look at the basic text of what's in these messages, they are saying to the Ukrainians, if you want your leader to be able to come and have this vaunted visit to the White House, you have to launch this investigation and commit to it publicly.
So, John Meacham, what do you see in all this? And you can put this together with all the stories that we saw yesterday, starting with the President of the United States on a television camera speaking to the world, saying, I think Ukraine should investigate the Bidens. And, oh, by the way, China ought to look into them, too. We learned later in the day from CNN that the President of the United States, in a June 18th phone call, proposed just that to President Xi on the call, said, you ought to look into the Bidens. The reporting on all that is the Chinese were very confused by that request.
Yeah. The president's essentially outsourcing the integrity of American democracy. And the line that we're going to hear all day, all weekend from these texts on the right is going to be that the president's been crystal clear, no quid pro quo. They're going to cherry pick that and run with it. The president's opponents are going to take the sum of the rest of it and run with that. And we're going to end up, I think, once again, in this arena where you stand determines what you believe, no matter what the facts show you and what the sum of the facts show you. 100 years ago, Walter Lippmann, the great columnist, wrote that one of the besetting problems of the modern era was going to be that people would not see and then define. They would define and then see. And I think this is an exhibit A in terms of that cultural and political reality for us.
So, Steve, there's been a lot of smoke thrown up by the White House, a lot of smoke thrown up by his supporters, a lot of equivocating. It's hard to equivocate on what the president said yesterday on the South Lawn. I mean, this is something that people have been claiming he didn't say. They've been twisting the words despite the fact we had the summary of the phone call on July 25th and everything else. Oh, he didn't mean that. He wasn't talking about that. There's no quid pro quo. He just, sometimes you have to stop and say, he just said it. He looked into a camera and said the thing that everyone's been saying he didn't say, who's been defending him.
Yeah, we were joking before the before the show started that just because you don't say something in private doesn't mean it's manipulation, it's foreign interference, it's whatever. He did it all in plain sight. One of the things that I think that struck me about this latest round of texts and emails and all this stuff is, until now at least, it was mostly Rudy Giuliani out there freelancing on behalf of the president. Now we have the president using the State Department to go out and do his business. And we can argue again about whether it says quid pro quo. I think that last text where it mentioned it was a kind of CYA text where, you know, they're kind of coming after us. We better say this isn't a quid pro quo. But to involve all these senior State Department officials and send them off on a mission on behalf of the president is really quite incredible. And then obviously with respect to China, simply engaging with our, what I view as anyway, our greatest strategic and economic rival in the world, and basically dragging them into our domestic politics and asking them to interfere in one of our elections is beyond comprehension almost.
You had diplomats quoted in that CNN piece saying, wait a minute, we want nothing to do with your domestic politics. If you want to talk about trade and tariffs, we'll do that. But the president holding the tariffs over their head in a way and saying, hey, I've got these tariffs as leverage if you don't help me look into Biden.
He seems to lack any concept of where the guardrails are on how you manage government visits versus... Yeah, I'm kind of getting that. It took me a couple of years. You know, he's living in his real estate world where you're trying to get a deal done, you pull out every tool in the arsenal you can, and he has no concept of how diplomacy and how international relations are managed.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.